Let's work on wrist mobility. It's really important if we're trying to get into any kind of load-bearing activity on our wrists, that we have strong wrists, that we have enough extensibility for the activity. So for example, a lot of times people seem to be wanting to get into handstands. So they want to be able to completely support their entire body weight in their hands. Even a plank, though, requires this similar sort of wrist mobility, and that is that, a plank even requires 90 degrees of wrist extension. So this angle here is 90 degrees in a plank, right? And then people start planching where they go even forward of 90 degrees. So this angle shrinks, right? And this angle gets bigger. So that requires a ton of wrist extension, okay? So what I want you to do is just give yourself a little test first. And I want to find out how much wrist extension you actually have. So just take your hand out in front of you and straighten the fingers. So don't bend the fingers backward, just keep them neutral, okay? And then I want you to just bend at the wrist, so just the wrist, okay, not the fingers. And I want you to send the hands back, or the hand back, and just go as far as you possibly can. Now, I want you to look at that angle. Now, I happen to have 90 degrees. I don't have more than 90 degrees, though. I have 90 degrees. Most of you will not have 90 degrees. You will have less than 90 degrees. And then if that's you, if you have less than 90 degrees and you're working on handstands right now, especially if you're doing that and your wrists hurt, I want you to ask yourself just a simple question. If I cannot physically move my joint into the required range of motion to perform the activity that I'm trying to perform, and that activity happens to be a very intense load-bearing activity like a handstand where you're bearing your entire body weight into those joints, are you prepared adequately to handle a handstand? Are you ready for a handstand yet? And the answer is obviously no. Definitely no. If you physically can't even move your joint into a position, and then you force your joint into the position because the handstand, forces your joint beyond 90 degrees with a ton of load, your entire body weight into your wrists, which, most of us don't strengthen our wrists very much in general, and so they just have not had time to adapt and become strong yet. Are you going to get hurt? Well, you're much more likely to have a bad time if you don't take time to build the prerequisite mobility first, and then build strength in that mobility progressively over months and months of time of training. Probably, if I were trying to get somebody into a handstand and they've never done any yoga at all, I would say maybe in a year we can get to handstand. So let's work on some pails and rails for the wrists. This was a very long-winded introduction. I don't know if you guys like that or not. Is that helpful? Do you like that? Comment, or send me a message or something. I'm sitting here in my own, universe. Do you like the information to go along with the practice? I hope you do. I like to know about my own body. I like to know why I do things. That's why I explain it to you, is because I hope that you want to know what the hell is happening in your own human body, and that you don't want to just blow through some stuff because it looked good on Instagram. That's what I hope you are into. But if you're not, and I'm just like talking to the wind, let me know. So here we go. We're going to do pails and rails. We're basically lengthening the tissues on the front and then strengthening those in a stretched position. And then we strengthen the stuff on the backside, the wrist extensors, in a short position, okay? It gives us full neurological control over the position, and we are basically bulletproofing our wrists, all right? And this is a way of introducing strength into the wrists in an extended position. So remember our test. How far can you lift the wrists off? Well, I want you to lift the wrists as much as you can into extension, and we're going to go into a tabletop position where you just basically, so lean back, sit your hips on your heels, lift your fingertips and palms off the floor. That's as much wrist extension as you have. Then I want you to lean forward until you close that gap and you find your version of wrist extension, okay? Now for some of you, you're going to be back here. Your shoulders are not actually going to be over your wrists. Okay, so just wherever your active end range was, that's where you go. And then we just stay here for a minute. All right, so we're just trying to work into a little bit of a stretch on the wrist flexors. So we're stretching a little bit of the capsules in the wrist as well. And we're just trying to get used to this position over time. Spread the fingertips as wide as you possibly can, and then just gently press the tips of the fingers down into the mat. So now from here, you could hang out in a passive stretch for a longer period of time. And in fact, I will eat up a little bit of that time by giving you a cue on the elbows and shoulders. And that, again, we need time passively stretching. So I want you to turn the elbows so that if you bent them, the elbows would go straight back, okay? So right now, if you bend your elbows and they go out to the sides, you're not externally rotating the joint. I need you to externally rotate because that stabilizes the shoulders and wrists, okay? So if you bend your elbows and they go straight backwards, that's the way that I want you to physically rotate the upper arm bone, the glenohumeral joint, shoulder joint. All right. Now from here, I want you to start to gently press the fingertips into the floor, and we're going to start our PAILS contraction, which is basically stretching the wrist flexors and then firing them up at the same time. So gently press the fingertips into the floor until they blanch, they change color, and then we start to ramp that up. We're going to ramp up to 100% in a moment, but we're going to do that over the course of 30 seconds with both wrists at the same time. So if it hurts, back off or don't press as hard, okay? This is gonna go to 100%, but you don't have to personally go to 100%. I'm just gonna give you the option to do so. So push down with about 10% of your maximum comfortable contraction. 15%. Keep the stretch, but push down through the fingers. 10, 15, 20%. 25%, 30%. You're pushing down, spreading the fingers and pushing them into the floor. Keep the stretch. 35, 40, 50% of your maximum comfortable contraction. 60, 70. Okay, now we're starting to really fire up those muscles. If it hurts, stay here. Don't continue to ramp it up. If you're comfortable, 75%. If you're comfortable, 80%. If you're comfortable, 90%. And finally, for 10 seconds, if you're comfortable, 100%, push down as hard as you possibly can. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. If it hurts, back off. 3, 2, 1, pause, sink into the stretch, stay there. And now we're gonna try to lift the fingertips up off the floor, okay? You're not gonna be able to actually do that, but I want you to try to lift the fingertips up off the floor. Try to lift the fingertips up off the floor. Get really frustrated because you can't do it. Hold, try it as hard as you can. 10, lift the fingertips. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax into your new range of motion. That's a lot of work. I would strongly recommend that you don't perform 2 reps in a row. That's one full repetition, by the way, of wrist, PAILs, and rails. That's freaking hard. If you're really, really working it, and especially as you start to gain more and more range of motion, look at this. I already gained about 10 degrees, and that's hard. This is hard range of motion to gain through the wrist. So take it easy, take it slow, especially as you really start to gain some mobility. Do not force it. If it hurts, if it pinches, back off. Either back off the intensity or back off the range of motion. Do not force. I cannot emphasize that enough. But it is very important to accumulate time under tension. And that is going to force those tissues to adapt and get stronger. Thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, you can always reach out. Thanks.